Elara Monroe was once the epitome of privilege. Born into an affluent family in San Diego, she was the only daughter of Calvin Monroe, the charismatic CEO of a prominent West Coast investment firm, and his elegant wife, Serena, a successful entrepreneur in the luxury skincare industry. Elara had never known hardship until everything crumbled in a single year. The Monroe family's downfall didn't stem from gambling or personal weakness, but from a federal investigation that uncovered a massive financial scandal. Calvin Monroe, once hailed as a visionary in the world of private equity, was charged with securities fraud and insider trading. The story became national news. Serena's business collapsed under the public scrutiny, and their assets were frozen. Calvin was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Elara was 17 at the time. Her world imploded overnight. Once a student at an elite prep school, she was forced to transfer to a public high school in Los Angeles and live with her maternal grandmother in a cramped apartment. She had to learn to navigate a completely different world, a world that didn't cater to her every need. At her new school, Elara stood out, not for her past status, which no one knew about, but for her odd blend of elegance and aloofness. Her grades had always been mediocre. She had little academic interest, spending most of her energy on maintaining her image. But with the future uncertain, her priorities shifted dramatically. She began studying with a kind of obsessive desperation. Her transformation was noticed. Teachers took pity on her quiet resilience. Her counselor, Mrs. Lockett, pushed her to explore options she'd never considered before: community college, scholarships, and eventually, the arts. Elara had danced recreationally since she was 6, and though she'd never taken it seriously, it became her ticket out. She auditioned for multiple performing arts programs, and through a combination of hard work and a standout audition, she was accepted into the College of Arts at Western Pacific University, a respected but not top-tier school in Sacramento. There, Elara met Iris, the narrator of this story. Iris was a sophomore, majoring in sociology, and came from a modest but stable home. They became roommates by chance, then friends by necessity. Iris recalls those early years with an odd fondness. Elara was a paradox, she writes. Half dreamer, half schemer. Elara never tried to hide her ambitions. She told Iris flat out one night, over ramen in their dorm room, that she planned to marry rich. Not just comfortably wealthy, but generationally rich, the kind who own vineyards, not just stocks. "This is my last chance to rewrite the story," she said. "I need to become someone else. Someone they'll want." She wasn't joking. Elara crafted a second identity in college. She pretended to come from a well-off family that had simply chosen a quieter, philanthropic life. She hosted dorm wine tastings with cheap Merlot and called it heritage training. She watched hours of documentaries on etiquette, fashion history, and classical music. She practiced her speech patterns and posture like it was an Olympic sport. To fund this transformation, she worked relentlessly. In her first year, she danced at local events and small venues, earning just enough to stay afloat. But her ambitions grew. By sophomore year, she was working as a freelance stylist and personal assistant to a network of affluent women in Sacramento. These connections led her to dinner parties, charity galas, and eventually, introductions to people who mattered. She never crossed the line into scandal, but she always danced right along the edge. While her classmates interned at summer camps or Starbucks, Elara flew to Scottsdale for an art auction she helped stage, or shadowed a venture capitalist she called her mentor. By junior year, Elara had become somewhat of a campus legend. Not for academic brilliance, but for being everywhere and knowing everyone. She had upgraded from cheap props to designer bags, mostly secondhand, but expertly curated. She began dating the heir to a tech empire in San Francisco. His name was Preston Vale, a Stanford grad with an MBA and a house in Marin County. They met at a silent auction in Napa. Elara had volunteered as an event coordinator. Preston was intrigued by her poise and intelligence. Their relationship progressed quickly. Within a year, they were engaged. But Preston and his family knew nothing of her past. She lied beautifully, Iris writes. Not maliciously. Desperately. Elara told them her father had retired early from international finance, and her mother was consulting for health startups. She said she grew up in a vineyard estate outside Santa Barbara. Her wedding was planned to be held at a private resort in Big Sur, and every detail was meticulously crafted to match her invented history. To pay for it all, Elara liquidated everything she had. She sold her Mazda for a leased Mercedes, bought a fake dowry of jewelry, and took out loans in Iris's name, which Iris didn't discover until much later. When confronted, Elara didn't deny it. I needed it to work, she said simply. I'm sorry. The fairy tale unraveled a week before the wedding. An anonymous email reached Preston's mother, attaching old articles about Calvin Monroe's arrest. The scandal reignited online, and suddenly, Elara's entire illusion crumbled. Preston broke off the engagement. His family quietly buried the scandal, but Elara was ostracized. She disappeared for 3 months. Iris later found out she had checked herself into a mental health retreat in the Mojave Desert. When she returned, she stayed with Iris in Sacramento for a week. Iris's parents were skeptical but allowed it. That week, Elara barely spoke. She spent most of her time on the porch, staring into space. One night, Iris told her that her parents were worried she might hurt herself. Elara smiled faintly. After watching my father lose everything and not die from it, I realized there's nothing worth dying for. If a marriage fails, you move on. Life's too precious to throw away. Years later, Iris says she still thinks of Elara with a blend of sadness and awe. She wanted to rewrite her story so badly, she became a myth. And maybe, in some ways, she succeeded. Elara Monroe vanished from social media. No one knows where she is now. But sometimes, Iris swears she sees her, on the cover of a small magazine, in a viral video clip, always under a different name. Reinvented. Reborn. Because that's who Elara always was. A girl who refused to stay buried.